Hey everybody, Mrs. Bianchi. We're looking at questions 7, 8, and 9, which are a little tricky because what would be helpful is if we were all solid on our rules for adding and subtracting integers. But in grade 6, there's not a lot of emphasis on that. So we're going to try to use the coordinate plane to help us understand how we get a point that would be 5 units away from a point. So if we look at number 7, let's look at the directions first of all. Write the coordinates of a point that is in the given distance from the given point. So they're talking about being 5 units from this point, which I plotted, -1, -2. So -1, -2 would be this blue dot right here. Now, if it's 5 units away and we have to keep the y term the same, see how they give you the y term? If we're keeping that as a -2, that means that we can consider that it could be 5 units to the right of it, or it could be 5 units to the left of it. So in other words, if it's to the right of it, it would be here. And if we're going 5 units left, it would be over here. So let's start with this point because that one's a little bit easier to figure out. What's the ordered pair for that green dot? We would have to go over 4 and down 2. So that would be 4, -2. So if they just want the x value, then you could say 4 is a potential one. Now, that's not to say that if we go to the left that this one would be wrong, because if we count, that many spaces to the left, what's this ordered pair? It would be a -6, -2. So if we don't have grid paper or the coordinate planes to plot this stuff, then what do you do? Well, what's the trick? Whichever coordinate you have to keep the same, you have to keep the same. But if it's 5 units away, then you're either going to add 5 to -1, or you're going to subtract 5 from a -1. So if you know your rules for integers, if you take a -5 and add it to a -1, that's going to give you 4. If you're going to do a -1 and combine that with a -5, see how the signs are the same? When the signs are the same, then you actually add the absolute value. So this plus this would give you a -6. So let's try that with number 8. We're going to try the idea of adding integers rather than plotting. So for number 8, they want that 8 units from 2, 4. Now we're going to plot that after, but let's talk about the shortcut. So if the x has to stay the same, then that means you're either adding 8 to 4 or you're subtracting 8 from 4 to go the other way. So if we think of what's 4 plus 8, 4 plus 8, wouldn't that be 12? So that's a potential y coordinate. But what if we take 4 and we combine that with a -8? Then the other potential answer would be a -4. Now let's see why your answer choices are either a 12 or a -4. Let's use plotting to help ourselves understand that. Now if we plot a 2, 4, let's plot that. Over 2 up 4 would be right here. Now I'm going to plot the points that I came up with. If I go over 2 and up 12, over 2 and go up 12, that would be here. And if I go over 2, down 4, let me move this out of the way so we're not confused. If I go over 2 and down 4, over 2, down 4, that would be right here. Now let's use my line tool here. I already made a line that's 8 units long. See, this line is 8 units long. Why do we know it's 8 units long? We could just do simple counting. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 4 more makes 8, right? So total 8 units. So we could go up or down. So in this case, we went down. But if we went up, then this point could be the other coordinate that would also be 8 units away. So that strategy of just drawing a line that's 8 units long and then saying, well, what is this point? This point is over 2 up 12. That would certainly work. And what is this point? That's over 2 down 4. But if you know the rules for integers, that's going to make things move along a lot more quickly. You won't even need to plot anything on a coordinate plane. Let's try the strategy for number 9. We're going to try the idea of understanding the rules for integers, and then if that fails us, then we're going to go back to actually plotting on the coordinate plane. So in this case, they want you to keep the x's the same. So that means we're either going to be adding 3 to a -5, or we might be subtracting 3 from a -5, because the -7, they want that the same. So what is a +3 and a -5? What does that equal? if we combine these two, then we're talking about a -2. Now, if we combine these two instead, a negative and a negative, when we combine them, is more negative, so that would end up being a -8. So we could have a -7, comma -8 as our ordered pair, or we could have a -7, -2 as our ordered pair. Now, if that's over your head and you don't understand the actual rules for integers, let's explore actually plotting. I'm going to go ahead and plot the -7, -5. We're going to go left 7 and then down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Make a dot. And maybe we should move this out of the way. All right, and then we have to be 3 units away from that. So if we went left 7, like we are supposed to by looking at this. If we go left 7, which is left 7, if I'm at 0 and I go left 7, then that brings me here. And then I go down 1, 2, that's this dot right here. And I figure out how long is that line. In fact, let me resize this here. This line, wouldn't that be 3 units long? This line that I just dragged over. So that's going up, right? But keep in mind that I could go down. I could go down from this dot. And if I go down from this dot, then that's putting me right here, right? This is this red line that I just drew. That's 3 units long. What would this ordered pair for the blue dot be? It would be left 7. Let's write it on the coordinate plane itself. Left 7 and down -8, just like we said. All right, so if this is over your head, no worries. Eventually you'll get the routine on how to add and subtract integers. Maybe we'll go over that a little bit more in class just to get you more solid. But these types of questions, when you have to give coordinates that's a certain number of units away from another set of coordinates, then we're not really talking about absolute value. We're talking about actually adding or subtracting a value from the coordinates, which can be a little bit tricky.